So are you going to take the tracks and go share it on a website, or?
I don't want to ruin those beautiful trails. If you're one of those influencers that's, constantly telling people where trails are.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Ben Motorcycle Adventures podcast. This is episode 40 with special guest Garrett Ortiz. Today we're going to talk about the forbidden fruit, the holy grail of off-road riding, and that is those secret single track trails and whether or not you should be sharing them with people you know, good friends, or even on social media for that matter. So this is a hotly debated topic, and we're here to cover it and share our thoughts with you today. And one reminder, listeners, if you enjoy listening to this content each and every week, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. One last thing, listeners, don't forget to check us out on social media at Ben Motorcycle Adventures on both Facebook and Instagram. And I'm happy to report we've got a new Instagram profile at crushing_miles. That is at crushing_miles. Now we're developing a new website that revolves around motorcycle adventure. That Instagram page will follow suit, along with a Facebook page and a YouTube channel. So just search Crushing Miles on your favorite social media platform, and you will be sure to find us. All right, so are you going to take the tracks and go share it on a website, or tell everybody on Instagram where it's at?
Right? No, I'm not, because I respect his work that he did in the past, and I don't want to ruin those beautiful trails for him, obviously, and then for other future generations to come, because that's what'll happen. It'll turn into a razor trail, or some jackass will go through there and beat the shit out of it. So
yeah, so that's kind of a prelude to today's episode, listeners. This is Garrett Ortiz from ADV Light. He was actually the first guest we ever had on the show. You're the first real guest. Episode 6, we talked LA Barstow to Vegas, but I sent you this YouTube video from, what is it, Everride ADV, and he's pretty popular on YouTube. He's got over 100,000 subscribers. But basically, to recap, this isn't verbatim, fact checked me, but he moved to Utah. He didn't know where to ride or who to ride with, or nobody rode with him, but he got out there. He started exploring like a lot of us do, and he had a small YouTube channel at the time. Started finding some good riding, started sharing it on YouTube, and I think he was ultimately gaining traction, gaining followers, gaining subscribers, and people started to ask if he would share the tracks or whatever. And now, reflecting back on that, maybe not the greatest decision from his perspective. That at least that's what I pull from the video. Here's what happens when a lot of people start riding your trails. It gets rough. People start moving out of the line. It gets wide. Quads creep into it. And then, like Garrett said, now we've got side-by-sides jumping on these trails. So just an overhead, Garrett. Is that kind of what you took away from this video too?
Yeah, I think he regrets it, actually. Kind of getting into what his vision of it. I think he might regret it, but I mean, at the same time, I think he is grateful for doing it, because it kind of gained a little bit of trust with his following, and which led on more followers for him, which is really crappy in my opinion. But that's my take on it. I mean, he even says in the video that all the trails that he shared are just thrash now, and that's not cool. So I don't care who you are, or what you do. If you're sharing trails like that somebody else gave you, have the decency to keep it a secret. I mean, that's just horrible.
Yeah, I feel like he kind of got in I don't know, I'm just speculating, But I feel like he got in a rut. He started to gain traction by showing some of this stuff, and I think you're right. Hindsight's 2020. He probably regrets it, maybe. Who knows how much income he's made from these videos and Patreon and so on and so forth. I can scroll through the comments. You know, he's got basically people begging to come and ride with him. He's also got people bashing him for this video too, and then people supported him. But he's been able to monetize this channel, I think, fairly efficiently, and he might regret it. This might be one of those clickbait type titles and clickbait type videos. I think it's pretty genuine. We've all been there. I've been riding a long time, and let's be honest, a lot of the places that we rode, the trails we rode, in a lot of cases, they're not what they used to be.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's something that just naturally happens over time. But, you know, when you put a video out there to the interwebs, you open yourself up to criticism really quickly in this community, I think. And, you know, I have people ask me all the time, like, oh, you know, can you share your tracks? Or, for example, like LAB2V, people ask me all the time, oh, can you give me the LAB2V tracks? And I'm like, guys, just go out there and ride it next year. Like, you know, this is something that's put on by a bunch of people. It's a fundraiser, first and foremost. You know, we want to keep these trails going for a long time, and that's the way to do it. So, yeah, it's just stuff like that. It kind of annoys me when people are always asking, oh, where is it? But I mean, at the same time, I understand where they're coming from because they're freaking cool trails. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for people that are sharing content like that.
Yeah, I get probably on a weekly basis, especially if I share a video, I'll get people in my DMs or even in the main feed that want to know where I'm riding. Usually I'll say Oregon or the Pacific Northwest. Sometimes,
funny you say that.
Yeah. Sometimes people get the hint. Sometimes they get mad at me. I've had a lot of people cuss me out through DM, and I'm just like, whatever. Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in because I think, you know, if you buy into the whole social media thing and you're attracted to that, you find something that works for you. A lot of times, single track videos, bitch and trail videos are really good. They get a lot of engagement, and you find success one way, and you have a tendency to keep sharing that same type of content, keep pushing the envelope.
Yeah, and I don't think it's bad to share that content as someone that, you know, is doing social media on a regular basis. If we want to reference them as influencers, but I think when they publicly announce what trails they're riding on, then that's an issue. Because I'm just like, yeah, I was laughing earlier when you said that you tell people that DM you that you ride in Oregon, because I tell people, oh, it's SoCal. And there's so many riding areas in SoCal. It's, people can kind of get frustrated sometimes when I say that. But there are other times where, you know, I might know the person, and I'll say, hey, you know, shoot me a DM and I'll let you know the location. But I'm very selective, and I vet those people out before, you know, I just give them the information. And you're probably the same way, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't share anything. I'll tell people where OHV areas are, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, where we should draw the line as far as I'll call them unmarked trails or secret trails, as he calls them here in the video. I don't really share that stuff. Keep it pretty close to the vest. I mean, even in the 90s, you know, we were riding secret locations even. So I've been kind of indoctrinated to this. I've been places where we'd stop before we cross the road, and there's brooms laying there, and we push our bikes across the road. Then we brush the road up with the brooms. I mean, I've seen
that's crazy.
Really elaborate, like brush sculptures, if you will, put together to cover up the entrances of trails and things like that. So I've seen this stuff for a long time, and again, I keep it pretty close to the vest. At the same time, I'm a little bit torn. I'm like, you know, who am I to hold the key and not tell people where some of this stuff is? I mean, especially the OHV stuff. Again, I'll get your take on that, but I'm at the same time, I feel like maybe I shouldn't be the keeper for all this stuff either. And maybe the best solution to that is just to not share any of that stuff at all. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, no, the some of the stuff that some of the influencers or whatnot post is, they're sharing landmarks through their videos, and that makes it obvious where they're at. And that can be an issue. For example, not going to call anyone out here, but I saw a video recently where there was some guys riding in a burn area, and that area is known to be a closure. So you get someone like, BLM or, the National Forest Service that sees those videos, they're going to shut that place down for a long time because of that one guy, or, maybe they see a couple of guys that are riding in the area. And, down here in SoCal, we have fire issues. So people will, after a burn, people will go and cross the gates and try and cut new single track because there's no brush that they need to go through. And it ends up causing issues for everybody. They close routes down that used to be open. It's no fun.
Yeah, where are you at on gates? Because I grew up in the other part of the state here in the valley, where your riding areas sometimes are commingled with private timberland, and there are gates up there. And I just grew up knowing or thinking or being told, hey, you don't go behind those gates. Sometimes you can walk behind them, like during a hunting season or whatever, but you don't ride your bike behind these gates.
Yeah, so we have the gates that we have are usually like national forest gates, and they usually close those gates when it's like about to rain, which sucks because traction and rain, two amazing combinations, at least down here in SoCal, because it doesn't get super saturated. But so they'll close those gates before a big storm comes. People cross the gates all the time. And, I'm not going to lie and say I haven't done it before, but at the same time, I don't publicize it and I don't post videos about it. But when you have some people, I've seen this before, people on social media that will literally videotape themselves going by a gate. And I'm like, come on, guys, like, seriously? Like, people are watching this, and so you always be careful.
Yeah, that's a recipe for activists. That's just the type of content that activists are looking for to get us kicked out of areas. I'm curious, we're talking about this. Where would you draw the line? So we're talking secret trails, and we're both saying, hey, we're keeping that pretty close to the vest. We're not sharing a bunch of that. But what about OHV areas? If you're riding, I don't know, Carnegie, Hollister, or wherever you guys ride down there, you're probably a little bit further south. But do you tell people you're in these OHV areas?
If I'm in an OHV area and it's a designated OHV area, I'll let them know, that's where I'm at. Because I think it's important for the community to know where they can legally ride, because then there'll be less, places that are shut down that aren't legal to ride in. It's like you said, it will create more traffic in those OHV areas. But that's what they're there for. I mean, if we don't use the OHV areas, they might shut them down too. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with sharing OHV areas with people.
Okay. Yeah. I would subscribe to that same belief. I really have no issue sharing OHV stuff. In the back of my mind, I think, that sucks, because if I reflect back about 10 years, especially here in Central Oregon, the OHV areas look quite a bit different for, a whole host of reasons. But one of the main reasons is just the amount of people that come over here and use them, the impact. Trails are wider, they're rougher, they're more whooped out. Some areas have been shrunk down compared to maybe early 2000s, but it is what it is. At least you can point people towards a place designated for that, and they're not out tearing up roads, which is one thing I hate to see people out there cutting cookies in roads and stuff like that. That makes us look bad too. But
Oh yeah, yeah, I see that all the time up here. Off the main fire road, people will cut some single track, and it literally is in like a tall brush area. So a header or spark. If someone didn't have a spark arrestor, could easily come out and just torch the trail and the whole forest. And it's happened actually in one of the OHV areas down here about a year and a half ago. Some guy tipped his like YZ 250 over and leaked gas, and the gas ignited, and it burned the whole OHV area up. And he was riding in an area where there was really thick brush. So yeah, there's even in OHV areas, stick to the trails and don't go off the trail and start cutting your own stuff.
yeah, that when it starts to get really hot and dry, and maybe you guys don't have that option sometimes because of your weather patterns, but when it starts to get like that, I'm usually out. Screw it. I want to compare and contrast. I want to get your take on riding in SoCal where you're at and riding in Oregon, and not necessarily trails or conditions, but what's it like if you show up at the trailhead or an OHV area or whatever on a Saturday? Are all these areas just filled full of people?
So where I'm at, there's one OHV area that's close to me. It's within 15, 20 miles. And that's Wildemar OHV. And that's closed because that was where that fire happened a year and a half ago. So no one really shows up there. And then the other ones that are, somewhat close, I guess like 60, 70 miles away, would be Hungry Valley. And that's where Gorman is, if you're familiar with that area. And that place gets pretty busy. It's got a lot of, single track and good stuff out there. But that place can get pretty busy. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you can go up into the desert. The high desert has almost open riding everywhere, which is the good part about the desert. And that's why I like to ride up there because, you don't have a lot of people hanging around there. And if you do see people, it's just kind of like you just ride right by them. Yeah, it's there's a lot of more, I would say, open riding down here than like OHV type.
It's kind of a weird thing up here in Oregon. In Central Oregon, in the winter, sometimes conditions are good enough to ride one or two of these areas over here. So you get everybody flocking to Central Oregon, and obviously the staging areas are crowded, and the trails get a lot of use, a lot of abuse. But it's kind of unique. A lot of the Oregon OHV areas are near, kind of populous. I don't know how I want to say that. Population dense areas. Tillamook State Forest out of Portland, for instance. So these places have changed a lot over the past 10 or 15 years, I've noticed, and to the point to where I really don't ride on the weekends anymore. It's just too many people out there for me. And I've even seen some pictures from this weekend. I'm looking at people showing me photos from staging areas and like, holy smokes. I'm glad they're getting out there and riding and recreating, and it's supporting the sport, but I just can't believe how many people are getting out there compared to, again, 10, 15 years ago.
Going back to, social media and how it's affected dual sport and adventure riding, I think it's helped. I do think it's helped get people out there more. This is kind of on a tangent, but I have noticed definitely an increase in people that are riding the last 10 years, which is good.
Yeah, but yeah, there's got to be a price to pay with social media too. Here locally, there's some prominent peaks around, and one in specific, it's called the South Sister. A lot of people like to hike it or backpack on it, and I think next year a lot of these trails, including the South Sister, you actually have to get a permit to hike it, which is kind of a hot topic around here. But I remember going and climbing the mountain in, I think it was 2012, 2013 maybe, 2013. And there was there's probably 500 people on this 12-mile stretch of trail. I can't imagine what it's like now, but that's kind of where we're getting.
Yeah, and one thing in Southern California and in California in general, we have a lot of public land here. Whereas in a lot of other states, you don't have a huge amount of public land, from what I've heard. I know one of my friends moved to Texas, and he said like there's hardly any public land to ride on, and and then you have more people that are getting out there and riding and stuff, and then you have more idiots too. Like yesterday, it's just going off on a tangent again, but yesterday there was a bunch of side by sides that were coming up a street legal mountain road, and they were hauling ass, and they have no clue that there could be someone coming around the corner the other way on a bike. And that's another thing I think that that we need to promote more on trails for these new people that are joining is safety, because they have some of these people that they've never done off-road in their life. They go by side, and then they go and drive it in places, and they have no idea about the safety behind it all. That might be a good episode maybe to come up with at some point.
Yeah, the side by side. I have some family members with side by sides, and I think they're responsible users. But admittedly, the side by sides scare me for a couple reasons. I'm seeing them start to nose in on some of our trails, and it's not legal. They're too wide, at least in Oregon right now. I wouldn't want to meet one. And then I had some pretty close calls on the Idaho Backcountry Discovery Route last summer with some. There's a section between Avery, Idaho and Warren, Idaho. I think it's about 30 miles. And Avery, Idaho and Wallace, Idaho. But I counted like 30 some UTVs up there, and it was Labor Day, so they were out there doing whatever. But all of them were hauling ass. Most of them weren't on their side of the road, and some of them they even had, I don't want to call them little kids, but they were kids in their early teens driving them too, and it kind of sketched me out.
Yeah, and it's unnerving because you don't want some like 12 or 13-year-old coming around a corner, power sliding right into you. So it's yeah, it's definitely scary. You have to be really careful on the trails today because just people aren't as aware, it seems. And I think that's some part of that safety is having the right equipment on your bike and doing your part to prevent some of those crashes. Where like the Moto-Minded headlights kits are really helpful to allow people to see you on the trail. I can't stress enough how people need to keep their headlights on when they're riding, especially on tighter trails or fire roads.
Yeah, with your stock KTM, that's not an option. It's always going to be on, but that light is pretty weak. Like you said, if you get a Moto-Minded / Baja design setup, you can even flick it to bright, and you'll have good visibility. That's just one of those preventative major or safety measures that all of us should be taking when we're out there riding. A lot of people like to shut them off, or for some reason, I'm not sure why. But yeah, that's one of those things. Might be the difference between you getting hit by a side by and not getting hit by a side by.
Yeah, exactly. Making yourself noticed and make people aware that you're on your own way around the corner.
All right, yeah. To kind of sum all this thing up, I think we're on the same page as far as these quote unquote secret trails or single track trails or whatever that are off the grid. We're going to keep it close to the vest. We're going to vet that stuff out if you do bring anybody on or a new guy joins your group. But like I said, I've been on those rides. No GoPros, no GPS. Again, we're dragging brooms across the road, things like that. So it's we're not the only ones that are concerned about it. I'll say that.
Yeah, and something to mention, I think, for everybody listening is if you're one of those influencers that's constantly telling people where trails are, I would just take a step back and think about it a little bit more, and think to yourself, if I share this more, how whipped out is it going to be for myself? And think about it, from your own perspective after you do it. And unfortunately, I think a lot of them are doing it just for the additional engagement and follows. like you said, but keep it a secret. Don't tell too many people about it unless you really know them well.
Yeah, and whatever you want to say about this video, it did make me think a lot about that too, and then just psychology in general. And again, when people find something that works on social media, they're gonna wring every last drop of water out of it. So, and from one angle, I understand, but also again, I would advise everybody to consider all this stuff moving forward, like I did.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about how many followers somebody has or how much engagement that they're getting as an influencer. It's about building the sport and building the community. And you don't build the community in a good way sometimes if you're getting trails blown out or whatnot. So just something to think about for some folks.
Cool. And listeners, if you've got a rebuttal, if you disagree, agree, or want to chew us up one side or down the other, at Ben Motorcycle Adventures and at ADV Loud on Instagram, or you can send me an email. Garrett, want to thank you for coming on and doing this episode.
Yeah, man, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Garrett. Really enjoyed it. And listeners, that's just a little bit of sample, a little bit of a teaser of the types of content and discussions Garrett and I are going to have on a weekly basis on the Crushing Miles podcast. Now, stay tuned to the Ben Motorcycle Adventures podcast for updates on when we release that, but I would expect that we'll crank out 5 or 6 episodes and release them sometime in the latter part of June. And again, dedicated website to Motorcycle Adventures, social media platforms, cool collaboration. So I'm really looking forward to working with Garrett, and then also I'm looking forward to the end of November. I'm going to head down to LA and ride the LA Barstow to Vegas ride with him, that 2-day, 500-mile dual sport in SoCal. Really looking forward to that, and really looking forward to catching up or reacquainting myself with some of the slot machines in Vegas. But no, seriously, and considering this episode, this topic, I want to make it clear, no disrespect to the Everride guy from YouTube or the video. The video's been out for quite a while. I think it came out in February. But I've had a lot of time to think about it, and it really did make me think. And that being said, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's hear what you have to say. benmotorcycleadventures@gmail.com. I'd love to read through those comments and share them on the air for the next episode. And I'm out of here. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time on the Ben Motorcycle Adventures podcast. Thanks for listening.